Is the American dream dead? Pros and cons of life outside the US.
Why would I work so hard when I can't imagine buying a house? If I can't look at the menu of a nice restaurant without sweating, if I can't go and do fun things, can't travel, can't even go to the doctor because you don't know how much it's going to cost even with insurance. Would you like to work less and live more? Us too. Life is meant to be enjoyed. If you're thinking these things, you might want to listen carefully to our show today because we made a decision. The biggest decision of our lives, possibly.
We've left the US to see what life is like in other countries.
We're Scott and Maddie with Touchdown Money Travel. We slow travel the world while making money online. Look, we love the US and we're very lucky and blessed to be able to do this. But man, sometimes I feel like in the US, we're getting ripped off. The US is the richest country in the world, but not safe.
And the food quality is much lower compared to other countries we've visited so far. And I've worked in healthcare, so I want to see how it compares to other places. And what about raising a family? It's so expensive in the US, so we've set out to try living abroad in places all over the world. We've already spent 1 month or more living in Mexico, Spain, Italy, and South America, with plans for a month in Greece and maybe even more in Southeast Asia.
So we said, let's do it. We gave up renting our comfy condo and we're on the road full time. We pledged to show you the real pros and cons of each place that we settled into. Not everything is better outside the US.
But so much is, especially value.
What great values come to mind from our travels so far?
The biggest one for me is quality of food and drinks. Oftentimes in the US, you have to pay a lot more to get clean food and drinks. And in a lot of other countries, you really don't have to. It's the same price across the board.
So we'll talk about the food quality a little bit later. But here, just straight up the value, you can get food for much cheaper, sometimes half the price in a restaurant without sacrificing quality. Like, it's good stuff for half the price. Some countries we found it's like 30% off, 20% off, depends where you go. It's amazing. Like, so we're in Spain right now, restaurants, 20% off, no tips.
He's saying 20% off of what we would pay in the US. So it really depends on what your norm is and how much you eat out, but I would say 20% is fair.
Yeah, and in Mexico City, we found it was like 20 to 30% off. And this is one of the nicest cities in Mexico. It's the capital. We felt safe in the neighborhoods we stayed in, all that kind of stuff. So things are just straight up cheaper, and we didn't find that they were lower quality at all. So you were talking about how like Ubers and trains are cheaper.
Right, so traveling within the country, it's much more affordable. You don't necessarily have to own a car, although it would be a luxury. It's easy to live without one, whereas I think in the US, unless you're in a major city like New York or even Miami, you kind of need a car. The way that the housing is built and the cities are built, you need a car.
So you're saving money without having that car payment, filling up your tank with gas, maintenance, all that kind of stuff. And in some places we've been, it's really affordable to like zip around town, and even the traffic wasn't bad, for quality of life.
Mm-hmm.
Other things we found a lot cheaper, anything that requires, a person doing something like a massage. So that's kind of like in America, we would splurge and say, hey, it's our splurge. This is a luxury. We're getting a massage. This is for a special occasion. Now we haven't been to Southeast Asia yet, where it's supposed to be super cheap, but we did have a nice massage. Where was it? That was like $40.
We were in Peru, and it was a nice spa, and it was at half the price or less than what we would normally pay in the US for the same service.
Yeah, and this is in a nice neighborhood in the capital of Peru. So it's not like, if you move to the mountains. No, this is the nicest place, and everything is like half the price. Incredible. It's just game changer.
Same thing with haircuts. I got a haircut in Medellin, Colombia, and this was a few months ago now, but it was just as nice as the salon I was going to in South Florida, but half the price.
Yeah. And so trains, you talked about Ubers a little bit. So let's say you want to do some train travel. So, we're in South Florida. So in South Florida, they have the Bright Line, which is the nice train. Right, it could take you down to Miami. And sometimes that costs the same price as when we travel like across countries here, or from like the north of the country to the south of the country.
Yeah, 2 tickets One way for us to go from like West Palm Beach, Florida to Miami is around $80. So taking the train is pretty expensive for a weekend trip. Obviously, you add that to your list of expenses with a hotel and eating out. So just something to consider. For example, in Spain, we just went from Madrid to Seville, and that was almost a 3-hour train ride. It was direct with one stop in Cordoba, but we stayed on. And it was $60 for the both of us one way. So that's already $20 off the one-way ticket, and we went twice as far.
And again, it's a nice train. You're not sacrificing whatever. That's one of the biggest eye-openers to me is price is lower, okay, cool, but no sacrifice in quality. Like sometimes, like I had some misconceptions, like sometimes, oh, if it's cheaper, it's gonna be kind of crappy. No, sometimes it's better. So that's what I'm saying. Sometimes the US feels like a rip because you're paying more and you're not getting more. You're not getting a higher class of service or what have you. So that's one thing we've really enjoyed about traveling. Into the parks and nature is these parks are really safe. We just went to the Central Park.
Retire Row Park in Madrid.
In Madrid. I would call it their Central Parks. I'm from New York City, could equate it. We walked around at midnight and it was safe, mind-blowing. Like, we'll talk about that more in future videos.
There were people working out, like girls on their own running, going for a run at night because it finally cools off at night. And it was a bizarre experience. We'll talk more about it in the video.
It's just the point is it's a beautiful park. So how does life overseas make you think about retirement?
Okay, so I know there's like a huge movement called the FIRE community, financially independent, retire early. And you know, one of the easiest ways to retire early, obviously, is by lowering your expenses, so lowering your cost of life. So if we could take our current lifestyle in the US and take it somewhere like Southeast Asia or maybe Mexico, Central America, Latin America.
Here's how I think about it. Let's say you could cut your expenses in half, right? Could you retire 10 years earlier? 5 years earlier? Now? Like, this is your life. And, you know, I just think for myself, like I always had this thing they taught you, you work this, you retire at 65 if you want or you're lucky enough to. Some people, they can't even think about doing that right now. The thing is just expand your mind by expanding what's possible. You know, it used to be, I'm from New York, New Yorkers would retire in Florida and it was beautiful and cheaper. Well, Florida's not so cheap anymore. So more people are like, I'm gonna retire to Mexico. And some people have a preconceived notion. I did, Mexico's dangerous, you know, things have changed in the last time you've probably thought about it. And the news will exaggerate things and so on. We'll talk about that more in a second. Like you're not really moving to a country, you're moving to like a community. We'll talk about that. That's a big one. But your whole life can change. You can pretty much buy your freedom by lowering your expenses without sacrificing quality.
Yeah, so the big key here is making US dollars in a country where they go farther or things just don't cost as much.
Yeah, so if you're living off a retirement income, right, you can only stretch it so far in the US unless you move to, you know, some place that's really cheap within the US. But if you want to be in a city or in a place with, you know, it's beautiful, that's not cheap, you know, you can find beautiful places that are cheap outside of the United States. And that's what we're looking for.
Yeah.
And food. We're looking for great food.
We like to eat.
The super important note I wanted to make is don't make the mistake of researching life in a particular country. I mean, yeah, the country does matter, but more important is the community you live in, the city, and not even the city, the neighborhood. Like imagine someone who's from, let's say, France, and they want to move to the US. Should they look, is the US safe? I mean, does the US have nice weather? That's hard to answer, right? So think these other countries are big. They're way bigger than you think they are. At least I didn't even realize. So if should you move to the US? Well, if you're living in East St. Louis, it's going to be very different than if you live in Beverly Hills or in Brickell, Miami. Even if you search like life in New York City, life is very different in the Bronx versus Soho in Manhattan. Same city, very different life. And we've seen that. We went to Medellin, and that's how the locals say it. So when you're making US dollars, you can often afford the nicest neighborhood of a major city or a resort town or what have you, depending on the country you're going to, currency conversion and all that. So right away you're upgrading your lifestyle. In Medellin, we saw, there are really poor neighborhoods, but we weren't in those neighborhoods, not to live anyway. Same thing in Mexico City, maybe further out, but there's a huge area that you'd never have to leave if you didn't want to. That's safe, clean, plenty to do, family friendly, nightlife, everything.
And it's affordable.
Yeah, so it really depends where you're moving exactly, and that's why you should visit to see for yourself. Like, okay, I like this neighborhood. This is our style. Oh, this neighborhood, maybe it's too loud or it's too quiet, whatever it is for you. All right, let's talk about food quality in supermarkets and restaurants.
So a hot topic in the US right now, if you watch any of the news, is about getting like certain dyes banned and certain chemicals banned in our foods. And that's certainly a step in the right direction. But if you think about it, we are pretty far behind places like Europe, specific countries. I mean, France, Italy, Spain. I mean, just the things that they don't allow in their food or in the farming industry, it's completely different from the US. And I understand like the US is more about like mass production and capitalism, making money. I get it. But at what cost do we have to pay in terms of our health? So, I mean, cancer's on the rise. People are dying from weird diseases every day. And
like even if you don't believe that, right? You say, oh, it's exaggerated. Okay, try the food. For myself, it's hard to know what to believe anymore. I straight up feel better eating the food here. It's as simple as that. I'm not gonna do a science experiment. I feel better eating the food. I don't think it's like a mystery.
Yeah, we rarely feel like bloated or have digestive issues.
And you know what's weird? Like food that I get in America, and we try to get decent quality food, organic chicken and blah, 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 but in the refrigerator, it can last quite a while. Here, the food spoils pretty quickly, and that upset me, but I'm like, wait a second. Maybe it's because there's not a lot of crap in it. So, it's the difference. And so I do miss some of our delicious chemicals in the United States, like in the fast food. It actually tastes a little too clean. But the food in many parts of the world, at least so far, places we've visited, is a higher quality. And that really upsets me about the United States because it could be.
Yeah, and I mean, something I kind of touched on earlier, to get cleaner food in the US, you really have to like pay the price. And it's not like $1 or $2 more expensive. It's like sometimes you're paying double for the same thing, but you're paying double because it's cleaner and because you know exactly what's in it. And it just feels unfair. And it just makes you like not have trust. And I hate how hard you have to think in the grocery store and how much time you have to spend reading the ingredient labels. It's just really frustrating. And, we want to have a kid or kids one day, and thinking about like being scared of what to feed my kids one day, that really just sits with me.
There's something I really like on the labels in the supermarket of many of the products is they have A, B, C, D, E for a health score. I don't know how accurate it is, but basically if it's, sometimes you're not sure. When you're eating potato chips, okay. But some is frozen food, some is different types of, and they're like, this is a C, and other food is labeled an A or a B. So it gives you at least a general idea, and it's very prominent on the front of the package. What you're getting into when you buy it. So I think that helps. There seems to be more regulation about that. But yeah, just try it for yourself and see how you feel while eating the food. All right, let's talk about quality of life. I love walking and not needing a car. Sometimes this comes at the cost of convenience, right? Having a car can be convenient, but with delivery these days, things like that, some cities are really set up to be walkable. Right now we're in Seville, Spain, and there's a supermarket that is a 3-minute walk. There's another supermarket that's a 2-minute walk, convenient place. There's a 10-minute walk. There's an Aldi's, right? So you have these things and they're set up on purpose for people who don't necessarily have a car, or you don't even have to go on public transportation. You can walk, and that alone might make you feel healthier by doing that.
Or, I mean, also the public transportation here, especially in a lot of countries in Europe, we've noticed is really clean and safe, and it's encouraged. But it's normal for people to take public transit here. In a lot of suburbs in the US, it's not normal, or you avoid it at all costs. So
it's safe, clean, and cheap. So that could be a game changer too. Not having a car, not having to worry about that stuff could change your life.
something else I really like about other countries, not just Europe, but also we found in Mexico and South America, the work-life balance. And I know this is like this elusive thing that everyone's always like striving to have work-life balance. What does that actually mean? But you see it here. So we're in Spain and you see people of all ages, no matter the night of the week. It could be a Monday night. They're out having dinner with their families or friends, drinking wine, having a good time, having conversations,
It's
being
very
social.
social.
Yeah,
it's so social.
it's super social and just it's relaxed. It's not showy. It's not. I mean, I'm sure they all have to work the next day, but they're out there at 10 p.m. because it's finally cool to sit outside. They're sitting outside. It's nice to sit outside. You're not sitting in like a parking lot or next to garbage. It's just a different way of life. And people really, you can tell that they prioritize this quality time with their families or their friends and socializing and talking to people outside of work, or, you know, just having that balance.
Yeah.
Not really necessarily working to live, but living to work.
Yeah. Sometimes as Americans in the US, we're kind of defined by other people by what do you do for a living? Other cultures, that's not the definition of who you are at all. And so that's kind of also mind-blowing, right? And you could see by how people live their lives, right? They're prioritizing hanging out with friends, you know, getting their work done also, but exercising, playing sports. You know, in Lima, I had no idea they had such a gorgeous coastline.
In Miraflores.
Miraflores. And they built parks that are incredible, free for everyone, and they're full of families, all hours. And this is what people do. I'm not saying it's what everybody does. I'm not saying life is perfect there, because we'll get to the cons. And some people who are living there, you might comment, oh, work-life balance is terrible. Okay, from what we've seen, our own eyes, different communities are different. We are saying we've lived in the nice places. We're privileged to do that. We understand that. But this video is mostly aimed to people who are in the United States, maybe Canada, who, you know, we're blessed. And you can go to these communities, and we feel like we're trying to respect those cultures. And also we buy local. So hopefully we're helping these economies also and helping people who work here. But yes, you embrace their lifestyle if you want. Yeah, and that just changes your whole outlook.
Yeah, so I mean, we love the US, but there is that hustle culture, and especially in your working years or those years that you like want to start a family, there is that idea that you really need to focus on your career, and that's great. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying we're looking for something a little more relaxed, where we can enjoy our life and not feel that stress.
If everything costs less, but still is nice or better, you don't have to make as much money. So you can work fewer hours or work a less stressful job, things like that. So we've also found travel is better when you travel. So you can see so many more cultures. So the United States, you know, we've both been to plenty of different states, and they're all different. They all have nuances and stuff, but they're also a lot the same. It is the United States, and over the years, the culture has, you know, it's not that much different. I mean, there's definitely differences, but you can go, when you travel to Europe, now you're a train ride away from a really different culture with a different language and different history and different kinds of castles. You know, just everything is, you know, same thing. When you go to, you know, travel to parts of the world where countries are a really cheap flight away or cheap train ride away, you can really say, oh, I'm seeing a very different culture and part of the world, because it's all around you.
For instance, we spent a considerable amount of time in Mexico, Costa Rica, Colombia, and Peru, and they're all considered Latin America, but they are all very different. They all have their own cultures. They speak the same language, although it's not quite the same. They're all unique and awesome in their own ways.
All right, so it's not all upsides. Let's talk downsides. You know, when you're traveling a lot, like we are now, it can be tough to keep in touch with friends and family at home. So if you're thinking of doing something like this, You're going to have to make a special effort to keep in touch with your family and friends. Maybe talk on the phone once a week, or get on a video call, or meet up in real life once or twice a year.
Another potential downside is that if anything happens at home, it might be really hard or very expensive to get back home, or you're not going to be able to get back there. If you live close to your family, you can't be there maybe that same day. Maybe it'll take a few days if you're halfway across the world. And so that can be a tough pill to swallow. But it's something that you kind of have to come to peace with, I guess, before you make this move. And we definitely did that before we left. And I mean, we're still coming back to the US right now, so we're not gone all the time.
So yeah, I mean, you do how makes sense for your life. So you might want to travel and say your family's in the US, you could find which places have nonstop flights or in the same time zone or have a pretty easy flight. Coming from the Miami area, nonstop flight to Medellin, to Lima. Those are like awesome places for you to check out and visit. Another downside is you can get really far with just English in many countries, but learning the local language helps a lot with making friends so you don't feel limited. And that's been something that we're working on. And we could probably,
be better.
Traveling
can be a little bit isolating, especially if you know that you're not going to be there for a while. Like if we're only in a place for 2 weeks or a month, sometimes you get lazy, and it's not laziness about learning the language, it's laziness about putting yourself out there to meet people, because you're like, oh, well, when am I going to see this person ever again? But, I mean, you never know. You never know when you're going to be back somewhere, and that person, what if they travel too, and you guys can meet up somewhere else? So it can be hard and sometimes exhausting to make new friends. So I would say having to put yourself out there a lot and build up that network of people is a con.
Yeah, it can be tough. So yeah, it would take some effort, but even at home, it would take effort if you want to make new friends, right? You join a meetup group, you do hobbies, you're in sports, whatever, you like to meet people. But yeah, you're not going to be around that same group. In some ways, that's hard. In some ways, it could be invigorating. When was the last time you got to meet new people, right? Because you were forced to. But that's part of, I think, the fun of traveling. Like you're now,
it's an exciting.
We're here now. So this is a con, but it could be flipped into a pro if you think about it in that way. But you know what? You also don't have to interact with new people if you don't want to. You could just make out with your spouse all day, which is probably fine. I think a con could be, you have to see if you're compatible with the culture you're going to. And again, that could be a pro, but you're gonna have to find it. So this is really something that's really hard. I love to read and do the research, but it's really hard to know for yourself until you are in it. And there's so many things that might surprise you that you didn't know you like that you do. Some cultures you'll find are loud, right? And some are pretty quiet. Some have late hours and a siesta, and some really prize that 24/7 convenience, availability type of culture. Some places are easier to meet new people compared to others. So that's something to think about. You love Madrid more than I think you could have known, right?
Yeah, Spain has been really eye-opening. I don't really know what I expected, and I knew they do an afternoon siesta, whatever. But I didn't realize that it's a late night city and everything kind of gets pushed back. And so dinner's at 10 p.m. and I'm a night owl, so I love, love, love this. This has been great for my personality. And it's not that I like crazy nightlife or going to the clubs, but just everything's open later. And during that siesta in the afternoon, unlike Italy, which Italy is beautiful and I loved Italy, but everything in the afternoon in Italy shuts down. In Spain, they have tapas, so you can actually get food during that afternoon quiet hours, like siesta hours.
Yeah. So I'm really into the food. So I had some surprises. Mexico City, I probably should have known, but didn't know the food is amazing. And I'm from New York City, so I put a high bar. Amazing. Also didn't know that the neighborhoods, they're very walkable, and the neighborhoods are different from each other. So depending what you're looking for, you can find it, and all these are safe neighborhoods. Lima, I had no idea that the food was amazing. And it's so cheap compared to US prices.
It's a lot more than just ceviche.
Yeah, way more. I thought, I'm going to have a lot of ceviche here. No, this amazing stuff for Peruvian food. Absolutely delicious. Medellin, I thought, okay, the nightlife is going to be nuts. We'll party out. There's really high class nightlife too, not just,
Yeah, you have a lot of options.
Yeah, there's a lot of, you can do both, right? Whatever you want. So yeah, it's just, sometimes you don't know until you get there. And that's part of the fun too. But you might find as a con, hey, this is not my kind of place. But that's okay. That's how you learn more about yourself at any age. Another con is every place has its non-crime dangers, right? Yeah. So we experienced an earthquake in Lima, Peru, and it wasn't a small earthquake. One person died, but thankfully Lima is very prepared for earthquakes. So, we got, kind of shocked, but perfectly fine, safe. But that is something. I've lived through hurricanes in South Florida. I lived through a citywide electrical blackout in New York City. I lived in Cleveland and survived massive boredom. Just kidding, they have sports. So yeah, anywhere you go, nowhere is a perfect paradise. And if someone tries to tell you that, no, everywhere has a downside. But it's up to you to find, okay, can I live with that? Or do you want to, be here for a certain part of the year and then somewhere else another part of the year, right? There's a rainy season, there's a dry season, hot, cold. So open your mind, I would say. And that could really change your life. Like, that didn't happen for me until, I traveled maybe when I was younger, but I didn't really think about, hey, you can kind of live anywhere until the internet became a big thing. Or for you, maybe you can work anywhere for some other reason, or you already have some kind of income coming in from rental properties or retirement or whatever it is, right? So there's a lot out there.
Yeah, so to wrap it up, what we're doing right now is we are exploring our options. We are seeing what's out there, trying to, Scott likes to say we're sampling. We're kind of taste testing, sampling, whatever you want to call it. Going to these places ourselves to see what it's really like, and just seeing if they're livable, seeing if we could live there and have like the same or better quality of life, maybe at a better value would be the goal. So we'll see how it works out.
Yeah, so we're going to show you, the real experiences. It's not always great. But we are having a great time overall. Otherwise, we wouldn't be so excited to talk about it. But hey, like we could say we're in Seville right now. It's freaking hot.
Yeah, it's really hot
during the day. Like, okay, I wouldn't come here in the summer again, I think, because it's so hot, but it's very beautiful. And you know what? We learned. I'm glad. Madrid, even though it's the summer, awesome.
It starts to cool down at like 8 o'clock. Seville probably takes like 10 or 11 p.m.
So we learned, okay, where would we go? For our own comfort level. Some people love cold weather. Okay, well then go to those places and find out for yourself what you're compatible with. So this has been kind of a crazy decision for us to...
We're calling it our big adventure.
For sure, right? Like, we already had like a nice situation, felt very blessed, like comfortable, and we're doing our thing. But you know what? Life there's all sorts of lives you could be living, and you don't know what you're missing out on unless you give it a try. I think the last thing I would say is it can feel overwhelming, like, oh my goodness, go to an easy place for yourself, right? For me, like Mexico City was kind of easier because it's closer to the US. Yeah. You're probably familiar with some Mexican culture.
There's a lot of Americans there already too.
So I'm not saying you should go to Mexico City, although I am saying you should do that. Go to somewhere that you feel would be like getting your toes in the water.
Yeah, dipping your toes in the water. And I mean, if you guys have any places that you've been and fell in love with or think that maybe we should explore, please let us know in the comments. We're open to suggestions and learning about new places. That's why we're doing this. But if anything, I hope this maybe inspired people, or if you're nervous about taking the leap, we're doing it. So come join the fun.
Yeah. If you found this helpful, please like, comment, and subscribe. And to never miss another video, join our free email list on touchdownmoney.com.